On this special edition of the ICT Newscast, we recap the many change makers we featured, from a Diné elder to a buffalo rancher and an author with a special message. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. ASU offers the only online undergraduate digital media literacy degree, teaching students how to recognize and combat inaccuracies on all platforms. They are using cutting-edge tools and tactics to separate fact from fiction in a digital world overloaded with misinformation. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amarawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. In January 2022, Navajo leader Peterson Zaw received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Grand Canyon Trust. From 1982 to 1987, Zaw served as the chairman of the Navajo Nation. He then became its first president in 1990. At age 84, his long career spans many sectors, including being the special advisor to the president on American Indian Affairs at Arizona State University. Chairman Zaw reflects on his work from his home in Window Rock, Arizona.
One of them is probably the development of the Permanent Fund for the Navajo Nation. As you know, the Navajo Nation lived off mineral lease income. They make mineral leases with companies such as coal and all of the other minerals that we have here on the res, including the one that I think that did a devastating job in a negative way, which is the uranium. And so they lived off the annual income of those companies making the lease payment that they have with the Navajo Nation. So when I became the tribal chair, I've heard a lot of complaints about some of those companies, and it will take you to a position that you need to establish, which is that maybe that's not a way to build a nation, because what we're trying to do on a Navajo is really build a nation that we like to work with. And so we decided as a group that what we should do is establish a permanent fund. That way we don't have to rely on income from mineral leases from companies, and we'll have our own money that we can generate through interest earned each year, and then leave the principal in safe places with the banks and trust companies. And that way we have a steady income that comes in each year to do the project that we need to do.
The education of Navajo youth is important to President Zaw.
We used to have around maybe 8, 9, 10,000. We're right over 15, almost 20,000 students that are applying for a scholarship. Of that number that we now have in college, even if you educate only 1 or 2, they get their degree, they're equipped to come back to the Navajo Nation. You never know how much they can do at those local school districts, for example. Organizing the community, organizing the youth, so that they don't have to sit around, not do anything, and idle. It's one of those things that I think they need to learn how to do is to really create their own things that they have passion for, and just provide them with resources such as education and encouragement from families, their grandparents, and help them. Because even if you go on to college and get your degree or master's degree, you still don't really know what the local community wants done back in your community. So you need the advice, a sense of direction and an encouragement from the elderly people, because they live there all their life and they know what's needed. And all they need to do is work with the youth that's trained in the white man's ways to accomplish certain things. But when it comes to the local community and the Navajo people, they have to rely on that.
Zaw reflected on the Grand Canyon Trust Award.
Well, one has to feel good when they are helping somebody. You have to have a passion for that. You can't say to yourself, well, they gave me all this problem. Here's the way I'm going to solve it my way. You can't do that. You have to work with them. You have to also encourage them. The concept that they're able and capable and have the resources to resolve some of those issues. And so you put it back on them and say, okay, why don't we look at it? We, not me. And I think to people, that's really, really important.
Native Americans make up a fraction of Rapid City's population, but more than half of the jail population. A circle of elders is playing a direct role in trying to change that. Stuart Huntington has more.
Chris White Eagle's youth program uses Lakota culture to put and keep kids on a healthy path. He's helping to bring that same philosophy to the criminal justice system as part of the new Oyate Court that takes cases off the state docket and puts them into the hands of a circle of Lakota elders. The goal is to heal those who get arrested instead of punishing them.
When they get in trouble and stuff, just locking them up and just thinking that's going to fix the problem, it ain't. You know, I think with the Oyate Court, we look more deeper into trying to heal them. You know, we get to ask the questions the courts don't ask, get to the root of the problem.
Which seems to be getting results. The Oyate, or People's Court, launched late last year as a new diversion program out of the Pennington County State's Attorney's Office, is already expanding.
We went from going every other week to every week. So, there's growth.
Which means more help for people like Robert Jones, who got into a fight and was facing serious felony charges. He was scared.
You know, when you're just in the Western courts, you don't feel like there's anybody there with you. You know what I mean? You feel like you're alone, and that's what people get so scared of, is that the feeling alone, that feeling of something bad's gonna happen.
But he says he was even more apprehensive when his case got switched to the new Oyate Court.
When it comes to the elders being in the circle, it's nerve-wracking because they're really talking to you, saying things to you that make you sit there and think dang, I really need to do better. I really need to get my life together. You know what I mean? They give you that extra push. They give you that motivation because they are your elders. And sometimes that extra push is what you need. And I guess that's what made me really nervous, because I didn't know if I had it in me to be able to sit there and take the extra push.
He did. He's now employed, not getting into fights, and happily raising his infant son. It's the kind of result prosecutors seek. It's the kind of results the Oyate Court, using a traditional Indigenous peacemaking approach, many people believe can deliver.
The elders hear that case, they ask questions of the participant, and they get to the real heart of the matter, and then they come up with a plan to address whatever the real issue is. And it's remarkable to see. It's been remarkable to see. And that's really, I think, how we move forward with criminal justice in the 21st century. We're not going to solve problems by incarcerating people. We know that.
In Rapid City, Stuart Huntington, ICT Newscast.
Mycoplasma bovis. It's common in cattle but rarely deadly. For buffalo, it's taking a toll. In March 2022, the New York Times reported on Fred Dubray's bison herd, and the disease has no cure. Fred has been ranching on the Cheyenne River Reservation in South Dakota for 30 years. Take a look at this interview from April.
Well, unfortunately, since 2013, when they called attention to it, they haven't done anything, which was kind of shocking to me because I thought for sure they probably did a lot of research, and so I started inquiring around, and nobody really knows anything about it. And so I'm not sure why they dropped the ball at that point, but it just seems like nothing has been done. And so talking to all the veterinarian scientists that I can, there's just very little known about it, and it really needs a lot of research done. So.
Walk us through how you noticed that something was wrong with your bison herd. What happened?
Well, I noticed that I was having some buffalo that were crippled, and just I'd never seen that before because, they'll fight around a little bit, and some of them will get a little bit banged up a little now and then, but they come out of it right away. But we noticed that there would be some that just seemed to be getting worse and worse and getting more crippled. And so I kind of started paying attention to it. And then I noticed that a couple died from it. And so I took one into a local veterinarian, and he took some samples and sent it in and said, this is what it is Mycoplasma bovis. And I didn't really understand anything about it, didn't know a lot about it. And I'd heard that it was, I'd heard about it, but I didn't think that I had anything to worry about because I thought it was mostly in feedlots and stuff like that. And my herd is a free roaming herd that has very little contact with us. I try to keep hands off as possible. So I didn't think it would be ever anything possible to get into my herd. And then when it did, I thought, boy, this is really a big problem because if it can get in my herd, it can get in any herd.
That's a great segue into my next question, which is how many bison you've lost because of this disease, and how does that affect you?
Well, I've lost somewhere around 40, between 40 and 50% of my herd, probably my breeding herd, and it affects mostly cows and breeding bulls, big bulls, and so which is the main source of your herd dynamics, and so it's really devastating. And I've heard that it can lose anywhere from 20% to 100% from other people that have had it. And right now there's about 25 herds throughout the country that are infected with it. And I'm not sure, what kind of losses other people are having, but that's about what I've lost.
So often we hear from sources talking about how climate change is making a real toll on not just the weather, but things like animals and our environment. So I'm wondering if you think that climate change has anything to do with this disease.
I definitely think it does because, from everything that I've tried to find out about it, a lot of people say that they believe it's drought related because any time that it seems to come around, it seems to be during a drought and during real dry part of when the country is really dry. So but nobody really knows for sure, but that just seems to be prevalent when it is the big outbreaks of it. So, and I think just looking from my standpoint and my herd, it has been really, we've been severely dry here in a severe drought. And the grass has been affected. It was so brittle that you can break it off when you walk across it. I mean, that's getting pretty dry, and I've never seen it this dry before. So I'm pretty sure that has something to do with it. I'm not sure exactly what, and like I said, nobody understands really where it comes from. If it comes out of the ground, it can come in there. It's already in the buffalo. So those are the kind of things that really need to be studied to find out. And unfortunately, it just hasn't been done yet. So, I'm hoping to bring some attention to it so that when things start to happen and people can figure out, at least hopefully how to prevent it or how to deal with it at least. But right now, there's just no answers at all from anywhere.
Fred, I can hear while talking to you that these bison really mean a lot to you. Can you tell us how much they mean to you and your family and, what it means to have these bison who are sick?
The bison are our livelihood, which is, pretty vital part of our, that's our operation, but it goes way beyond that to us because, I've been involved in bison restoration back to Indian country for, a lot of years. And because in our tribe and a lot of other tribes, that's a set cornerstone of our culture. And especially for us, I said that's where we get our values from. That's our, uh, they say that we and the bison are one and the same. Whatever happens to them happens to us, and it's been that way since time immemorial. And so that was why it was important to me years ago to start the restoration effort, not only to our tribe but to all other tribes that have that kind of cultural relationship. So, and looking at the climate change and all the things that are going on, that was my way of trying to deal with it. Looking at this was probably real important to this part of the country in North America. It was probably one of the biggest, millions of buffalo roamed here, and that was the leading mammal that was on this part of the world. So that then when they got devastated and all the buffalo numbers went down from millions and millions of them down to 100 at one time.
That was bison rancher Fred Dubray. St. Mary's Indian Boarding School is a place tied with history to ICT's national correspondent Marionette Pember. The school once operated on the Bad River Ojibwe Reservation in Wisconsin, and it was the school her mother attended. Marionette shares this story.
I recently traveled to the mother house of the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration, the order of Catholic nuns who taught at St. Mary's Indian Boarding School on the Bad River Reservation in Wisconsin, where my mother attended school in the 30s and 1940s. Located in La Crosse, Wisconsin, the order's sprawling buildings include a convent, living space and nursing home for sisters, office spaces, archives, museum, and chapel. All are connected by a series of underground tunnels. The sisters gave me a tour of their properties and magnificent chapel. This inlay is mother of pearl.
Mother of pearl, and this is all marble. The altars are marble. Carrara marble from Italy.
And you said you have no idea of the cost.
We have no idea the total cost of the chapel, which is quite a mystery.
St. Mary's School closed in 1969, but like many Catholic orders that operated Indian boarding schools, the sisters have embarked on a campaign to examine this work and create a truth and healing process for harm they committed against Indigenous peoples. The sisters are digitizing their boarding school archives and making them available to the Bad River tribe. So tell me a little bit about, what the order is doing regarding its history at the St. Mary's Indian Boarding School in Diné on the Bad River Reservation, which I understand is the only Indian boarding school that the sisters taught at. Is that correct?
That's correct. We administered it from 1883 to 1969. And right now, I would say we're in a big learning curve of what the history is. We're re-looking at the history.
I like to say there has been a lot of conversating and wonders how long is this got to go on? I mean, how many, it sounds so vague and open-ended, and it doesn't really sound like, it's all this sort of internal stuff that's going on, framed in this fearfulness of not opening these institutions, not opening themselves up to possible, perhaps financial risk. That's really kind of what it seems to be to me, as a person looking in. So it doesn't seem to be moving very quickly, and that I think a lot of people find that really disappointing.
People who have been living their entire lives in this reality, their perspective is understandably different than people who are just saying after 2 years, wait a minute, there's a problem here? And you're right, it's been a long time in coming. Mary, this is particularly for you. This is personal, because the story of your mother and your grandmother, as you've shared it with the world, you've also shared it with me. I've prayed about your mom. I've prayed about your grandma. I've prayed about you. And I want you to know that I have heard the pain. I can't comprehend it, but I've heard it. I believe it. And as the president of the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration, I am sorry. I apologize for what those experiences and what our school has done in your family. I am sorry. And know that I will continue to pray, because I think that this conversation right now is part of a bigger picture that neither one of us knows, who's holding it.
We bless you in the name of the Lord.
Miigwech, thank you. The sisters' apology and blessings were unexpected, but represent an important first start towards healing. True reconciliation, however, demands action from all Catholic Indian boarding school entities. That action includes opening all church archives to survivors and their families. Surely, after all this time, Native peoples and all Americans deserve to know the truth. Mary Nett Pember in La Crosse, Wisconsin, for ICT.
In 2017, Jessie Taken Alive Rencounter won the Great Plains Emerging Tribal Writer Award for her first book, Petha Shows Me Sioux the Light. Since then, the writer, who includes Lakota language and culture, has published 3 more children's books. That includes her newest work called Rainbows in December.
So Rainbows in December actually was born out of my own grief. I'm losing both my parents within 33 days of each other due to COVID in late December of November and December of 2020, and dealing with my own grief. And I realized that historically, a lot of our Indigenous cultures really talked about the process of birth and death, how it's natural. And I realized that in our society today, it's almost like taboo to talk about that. And so also experiencing as a school counselor, knowing that so many kids came in not knowing how to deal with that grief, I wanted to write a book in honor of my parents and their grieving, and also how to teach how to deal with the grief, but also how to honor someone's legacy that has now passed on into the spirit world. So Rainbows in December actually came about of me being a little girl and being fascinated with rainbows, and my dad always talking about how we're going to find the magic in the rainbow at the end of the rainbow. And we chased a rainbow one day when I was a little girl across the pasture and in our field in the country. And, we didn't get to the end of the rainbow, of course. And I was so sad. And later as a young woman, my dad would always tell me, sis, you're the magic in the rainbow. You're that magic. And so on the day of the double burial of my parents, on our way going back to their house, after we had laid their physical bodies back to Mother Earth, it was super cold up in North Dakota and freezing. And all of a sudden, I'm watching out the window and this beautiful rainbow stretches across the sky. And immediately I knew that was my dad. My dad and my mom showing me we're okay and things are going to be okay.
That was children's book author Jessie Taken Alive Rencounter. In February 2022, we featured a book from the Minnesota Historical Society Press. Voices from Pajuta Zizi is written by Teresa Peterson and Walter Super Labatt Jr. Let's take a look at part of the film from Pioneer PBS in Granite Falls, Minnesota that features Labatt's work.
And one of my early pairs of moccasins I was so proud of that I came home to show my dad. He was actually getting kind of emotional. He was on the verge of tears because he kept rubbing the beadworks like this, and he's saying, "Oh," he says, "I thought this was a lost art." And so that was really a motivation to, continue. And I ended up I had not intended to give him that, but after that I got to give it to him. So I gave him the moccasins. When I started to make my outfits, learning to do beadwork, dang, I went to Tandy and I got leather and I started doing just about tore my hands apart. But I finally got my outfit done. But that year that I danced, some guy in the Powell circuit come up to me and says, "Hey, geez, I like your beadwork. Boy, you guys did a good job on that." I says, "Yeah, but geez, you look at my fingers, what I did to my fingers." And he says, "Oh, you have to have Indian tan buckskin. That's just like cloth. You need to." And I said, "Yeah, okay, but where the hell do you get that?" I thought that was something of the past. I asked my dad. I says, "Dad," do you know how to make Indian tan buckskin?" He says, "Well, sure. I used to help my mother make buckskin." So through his explanations and help, that's how I got started.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.